He is standing at the edge of the road. You would have seen him long before he saw you. Not because he was loud, because everyone around you would have gone quiet and then moved. The crowd would have parted the way crowds part when something frightening walks through them. And then you would have seen why. The man's skin is ruined. His hands are wrapped in cloth that has not been changed in a long time. His lips are cracked. His eyes are the eyes of a man who has been alone for years. Not the way a hermit is alone, not the way a monk is alone, but the way a man is alone when the world has decided he is already dead. He is a leper. Under the law of Moses, he is required to announce his own uncleanliness. Wherever he goes, he must call out, unclean, unclean. He cannot enter the village. He cannot enter the synagogue. He cannot touch his wife, his children, his mother. The historian Josephus, writing in the 1st century, describes men like him as people who are treated as if they were, in effect, already dead. They lived outside the camp. They buried themselves before their bodies caught up. He is watching Jesus from the edge of the road. And here is what you need to understand about what happens next. The law is very clear. If Jesus touches this man, Jesus becomes unclean. That is how ritual impurity worked in the ancient world. It moved from the contaminated to the clean, never the other direction. Contact with the sick made the healthy sick. That was the law. That was the logic. Jesus walks toward him anyway. This is not a video about miracles, though miracles will happen. This is not a video about healings, though people will be healed. This is not a theology lecture, though there are truths here that will stay with you. This is a study in what happens when broken people reach for God and what God does when they reach. And I need to tell you something before we begin. One of the people in this video will touch Jesus, and it will be the worst thing they ever do. The most intimate gesture in the ancient world turned into a weapon. We will get to that moment, but not yet. First, a man at the edge of a road, and a hand reaching toward him that should not be reaching. Stay with me. The man does not call out unclean, not this time. He has probably said that word 10,000 times. He has said it in the market, on the road, at the gate of the city, in the dark, when he could not sleep, and the only company he had was the sound of his own voice telling the night air what he already knew about himself. Unclean, unclean, unclean. But today, he does something different. He falls on his knees in front of Jesus, and he says something that is not a demand and not quite a prayer. He says, "If you are willing, you can make me clean." Notice what he does not say. He does not say, "if you are able." He has seen Jesus heal. He knows the power is there. What he does not know, what he cannot bring himself to assume, is whether someone like Jesus would want to touch someone like him. That is the real disease, not the skin. The belief that he is beyond wanting. Jesus looks at him. The Greek text here uses a word, splanchnizo, that means to be moved in your gut, in your intestines, in the deepest physical center of your body. This is not polite sympathy. This is the kind of feeling that grabs you before your mind catches up. And then Jesus does the thing that should not be done. He stretches out his hand. He touches the man. Before he speaks, before the healing, he touches him first. Josephus tells us that lepers in the 1st century were treated as if already dead. They were not touched, not by priests, not by family, not by the most compassionate rabbi in Galilee. The contamination moved one direction, from the unclean to the clean. That was the law. That was the logic of the entire system. But when Jesus touches this man, the contamination does not move toward Jesus. The healing moves toward the leper. The direction reverses. The logic breaks. I am willing, Jesus says, be cleansed. And the leprosy leaves him immediately. The Greek word is euthys, at once, in that instant, not gradually, not after a waiting period. The skin clears the moment the hand lands. Here's what most people miss. Jesus did not have to touch him to heal him. He healed people from a distance in other places. He healed a Roman centurion's servant without ever entering the house. He could have spoken one word from 10 feet away, and the man would have been whole. He touched him because the man needed to be touched, not just healed, touched. He had not felt another person's hand in years, and Jesus gave him that before he gave him anything else. Now move forward a chapter in Mark's gospel, and the story changes shape completely. There is a woman in the crowd. She has been bleeding for 12 years. 12 years. You need to sit with that number. Under Levitical law, a woman with a discharge of blood was considered ritually unclean for the duration. She could not enter the temple courts. Everything she sat on became unclean. Everyone she touched became unclean. She was not cast out of the city the way a leper was, but she was invisible in her own home, untouchable in the middle of the crowd. She had spent every coin she had on physicians. Mark, with characteristic bluntness, says the doctors had done her no good. They had made her worse. Luke, who was himself a physician, is kinder about the medical profession and simply says no one could heal her. She has heard about Jesus, and she has a plan. She will not ask. She will not fall at his feet. She will not make a scene or announce herself, because the moment she announces herself, everyone around her will step back, and she will be alone again in that circle of empty space that has defined her life for 12 years. She will just touch the hem of his garment, the edge, the fringe, enough to matter, small enough to hide. She reaches through the crowd. She gets her fingers on the fabric, and the bleeding stops. She knows it in her body immediately, the way you know something has changed before you can explain it. And then Jesus stops walking. Who touched me? The disciples are baffled. Peter says what everyone is thinking. Master, the crowd is pressing in on you from every side, and you ask who touched you. People are bumping into him every step, dozens of contacts per minute. What does he mean? Who touched him? But Jesus knows the difference between being bumped and being reached for. He uses a specific word, hapto, which means not a brush, not an accident, but an intentional grip. Someone grabbed hold of him on purpose, and when they did, he felt something go out of him. The word is dynamis, power, miraculous force, the same root as dynamite. It left him without his initiating it, drawn out by her faith the way a current is drawn through a wire. She comes forward, trembling. She falls at his feet and tells him everything. And Jesus says something that is not about the miracle at all. He says, daughter. That is the only time in all 4 Gospels that Jesus calls anyone daughter. Not a title, not a case study, a relationship. One word that gives her back what 12 years had stolen. The sense that she belonged to someone, that she was seen, that she was not just a condition or category, but a person with a name and a place in a family. Your faith has healed you, he says. Go in peace. She came in hiding. She leaves with a name. And now, here is the pattern, because there is always a pattern. The leper could not be touched by law. The woman could not touch others by law. One reached out. One was reached for. And in both cases, the contamination did not spread to Jesus. Something moved the other direction entirely. This is not how holiness worked in the ancient world. In every other religious system, the holy thing had to be protected from the unclean. The temple had courts and barriers and restrictions precisely because holiness was fragile, a flame that could be snuffed by contact with the wrong person. But Jesus is a different kind of holy. He is holy the way the sun is hot. You do not worry about the sun being contaminated by the darkness it shines into. The light simply wins. Every person in this video who was not supposed to touch him, touched him. And what they carried did not infect him. What he carried healed them. Pay attention to that. We are not done yet. We are only 2 stories in, and already the pattern is undeniable. A man, the law said, could not be touched. A woman, the law said, could not touch. And Jesus walks through both of those walls like they are made of paper. There are more. There are people in this video who will surprise you. People you recognize from Sunday school who look completely different up close. And there is one person we have not reached yet who will break your heart. If you have made it this far, do me a favor. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the second half of this. And drop a comment right now. Just tell me one name from this video so far that you're still thinking about. I will see you in 30 seconds. Jairus is not the kind of man who falls at anyone's feet. He is a ruler of the synagogue. That means he is the most important religious official in Capernaum, responsible for the building, the scrolls, the order of worship, the selection of readers and speakers. He is respected. He is watched. In a small Galilean city where everyone knows everyone, a man like Jairus does not make public scenes. And yet here he is, on his knees in the dirt in front of a carpenter from Nazareth, with the crowd watching every move he makes. His daughter is 12 years old. She is dying. Come, he says, lay your hands on her so that she will be healed and live. Jesus goes with him. The crowd follows. And that is when the hemorrhaging woman reaches through and grabs the hem of his garment, and the whole procession stops for a conversation that Jairus, in his desperation, cannot afford. Every second that passes, his daughter is closer to gone. And then the message comes through the crowd. A servant pushes forward, leans close, says the words that have ended the world for parents since the beginning of time. Your daughter is dead. Do not trouble the teacher any further. Do not trouble the teacher as if anything else in the world matters now. Jesus turns to Jairus before he can collapse into that sentence. Do not be afraid, he says, only believe. They go to the house. The mourners are already there, the flute players, the wailing women, the machinery of grief already assembled and running. Jesus says the child is not dead but sleeping, and they laugh at him. The Greek word is kategelao. They laughed him down, laughed with contempt, laughed the way people laugh when someone says something so wrong it almost offends them. He puts them all outside. He takes the father and the mother and 3 disciples into the room where the girl is lying. He takes her hand. He says 2 words in Aramaic, the language of the home, the language her mother used when she called her for supper, the language of ordinary life. Talitha kumi. Little girl, arise. She gets up immediately. She walks around the room. Jesus tells them to give her something to eat. That last detail is the one that stays with me. Give her something to eat. The most practical, ordinary human instruction imaginable, right after the most impossible thing in the world just happened. As if he is saying, she is back. Treat her like she is back. Feed her. Hold her. Stop standing there with your mouths open and be her parents. He touched death and death let go. But he does not only touch death when it comes to him. Sometimes he walks directly toward it uninvited. The town of Nain is a small village in Lower Galilee, about 6 miles from Nazareth. Jesus arrives at the gate of the city just as a funeral procession is coming out. A young man, the only son of a widow, is being carried out on a bier, wrapped for burial. In the ancient world, a widow who lost her only son lost everything. She had no legal standing, no inheritance rights, no one to care for her in old age. She was not just grieving, she was watching her future die. Luke says Jesus saw her and had compassion on her. The same word, splanchnisomai, that gut-level, involuntary physical movement of feeling. He was not asked. No one fell at his feet. No one grabbed his hem. He simply saw her and could not walk past. He touches the bier. The pallbearers stop. "Young man," he says, "I say to you, arise." The dead man sits up and begins to speak, and Jesus gives him back to his mother. He walked into a funeral he was not invited to and left it a reunion. Now we move to a dinner party, and the temperature in the room is about to change. Simon the Pharisee has invited Jesus to eat with him. The table is set. The guests are arranged by status. It is a proper, controlled, respectable evening. And then she walks in. The text says only that she was a woman in the city who was a sinner. The Greek word hamartolos carried specific weight. This was not a general term. In first century Galilee, it meant someone whose way of life was publicly known and publicly condemned. She had heard Jesus somewhere, teaching perhaps in the street, and something he said reached a place in her that had not been reached in a long time. She comes in uninvited. She stands behind him at the table, and she begins to weep. Her tears fall on his feet. She wipes them with her hair, an act so intimate, so exposed that the room goes completely silent. She kisses his feet. She breaks open a flask of perfume and pours it over them. Simon watches all of this and says nothing out loud. But Jesus reads the silence perfectly. "Simon," he says, "I have something to say to you." And he tells a story about two debtors, one who owed much and one who owed little, and a creditor who canceled both debts. Which one, he asks, will love the creditor more? Simon answers correctly, grudgingly, the one who was forgiven more. Jesus turns to the woman, still without looking away from Simon, and says, "Do you see this woman?" It is one of the sharpest questions in the Gospels, because of course Simon sees her. He has been staring at her in judgment since she walked in. But Jesus is asking a different question entirely. He is asking, "Do you see a person? Do you see what I see? Someone who has been forgiven much and is showing it with everything she has?" This is not a story about immorality. This is not a story about reputation. This is not a story about what respectable people do at dinner parties. This is a story about what happens when someone who has been told she is too dirty to be loved finds out she is not. "Your sins are forgiven," Jesus says. "Your faith has saved you. Go in peace." She came in broken. She leaves whole. And the most religious man in the room goes home exactly as he arrived. And then there is the man who was born blind. He has never seen a sunrise. He has never seen his mother's face. He has never seen the temple, the lake, the color of anything. He sits by the road and begs, and the disciples walk past him and ask Jesus a theological question about who sinned to cause his blindness. Jesus does not engage the theology. He spits on the ground, makes mud with the dirt, and puts it on the man's eyes. It is not elegant. It is not what you would design if you were staging a miracle for maximum dignity. Spit, mud, hands pressing on a stranger's face. But here is what the mud is doing. In the beginning, God formed man from the dust of the ground and breathed life into him. And now, The Son of God is on his knees in the dirt, working with his hands, making something out of nothing. The first creation used dust. This one does too. Go, Jesus says, wash in the pool of Siloam. The man goes. He washes. He comes back seeing. And the entire neighborhood falls into an argument about who he is. Some say it is him. Some say it is someone who looks like him. He keeps saying, I am the man. I was blind. Now I see. And nobody can agree on what to do with that. Here's the part nobody tells you. Later in the chapter, Jesus finds the man again. After the Pharisees have thrown him out for defending Jesus, he finds him specifically. He seeks him out, and he asks him one more question. Do you believe in the Son of Man? The man who was born blind says, Lord, I believe. And he worships him. He touched the man's eyes with mud and spit. But what he gave him at the end of the chapter was not sight. It was someone to believe in. Now we have to talk about the touch I warned you about at the beginning. The one that was not healing. The one that was not desperation or faith or grief or wonder. The one that took the most intimate gesture in the ancient world and turned it into the most devastating act of violence ever committed without a weapon. It is late. The Garden of Gethsemane is dark and cold. The kind of cold that settles into the Kidron Valley after midnight in early spring. Jesus has been praying so hard that the capillaries under the skin of his forehead have burst. Luke, the physician, records that his sweat became like drops of blood. He has asked 3 times if there is another way. There is not. He has accepted that. And then the torches appear through the olive trees. Judas walks at the front of the crowd. Behind him are temple guards, chief priest servants, men carrying swords and clubs. A small army assembled to arrest one unarmed rabbi in a garden. Judas has given them a signal in advance, a simple signal. Whoever I greet with a kiss, that is the man, sees him. The Greek word for kiss here is not the ordinary word. It is kataphileo, an intensified form, meaning to kiss repeatedly, to kiss warmly, to kiss the way you kiss someone you love deeply. This is not a polite greeting. This is an embrace. This is the greeting of a student for a beloved teacher, of a son returning to a father. Judas walks up to Jesus in the dark and says, "Greetings, Rabbi," and he kisses him. Jesus says one sentence, just one. "Friend, do what you came to do." Friend. He calls him friend. In the moment of the betrayal, with the torches and the swords and the crowd, and the full weight of what is about to happen pressing down on that garden, he calls him friend. I have read that word 100 times, and I still do not know what to do with it. It is either the most heartbreaking thing ever spoken or the most gracious. Perhaps it is both. Perhaps those two things are in the end the same. This is the darkest touch in all of Scripture. Every other person in this video reached for Jesus out of need or faith or desperation. Judas reaches for him out of greed and fear and a decision that has already been made. The hemorrhaging woman grabbed the hem of his garment and power went out of him toward her healing. Judas grabs him by the shoulders and power goes out of the garden toward a cross. The touch that saves and the touch that destroys look exactly the same from the outside. Both are intentional. Both are intimate. Only the heart behind them is different. But the garden is not finished yet. And this is where it gets remarkable. Peter, impulsive, loud, terrified Peter, draws a sword and swings it at the nearest person, which happens to be a man named Malchus, the servant of the high priest. He cuts off his right ear. Jesus stops everything. He says, "No more of this." And he reaches out and touches the ear of the man who has come to arrest him. He heals him mid-arrest. with the torches burning and the guards closing in, and his hands still warm from Judas's embrace. He heals the ear of his enemy. He never stopped, not once. Not even at the moment of his own capture did he stop reaching toward broken things and making them whole. They came to take him by force, and he left them with one less wound than they arrived with. Malchus went home that night, able to hear. I wonder what he did with that. I wonder if he ever told anyone what had happened to his ear in the garden. I wonder if he spent the rest of his life hearing the world through a miracle he received from the man he helped arrest. And then there is Thomas. Thomas was not there on the night of the resurrection. We do not know where he was. Grief takes people different places, and Thomas had gone somewhere alone. When the other disciples found him and told him they had seen Jesus alive, he said the thing that honest people say when the thing they most want to believe sounds too good to be true. Unless I see the nail marks in his hands and put my finger where the nails were and put my hand into his side, I will not believe. He is not being cruel. He is not being stubborn. He is being a man who loved Jesus so much that a secondhand report of his survival is not enough. He needs to know with his hands, the way humans have always needed to know the things that matter most. We reach for the people we love. We hold the hands of the dying. We embrace the ones who come back to us. Thomas wants to reach for Jesus, the way you reach for someone in the dark to make sure they are really there. 8 days later, Jesus appears in the room where Thomas is standing. He does not rebuke him. He does not lecture him. He walks directly to Thomas and he says, "Put your finger here. See my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my side." He offers his wounds to be touched. Think about what that means. The risen Jesus, the Jesus who has passed through death and come out the other side, the Jesus whose body can move through locked doors and appear and disappear at will, still has the marks. He kept them. He did not heal them away. He did not arrive in a body that showed no evidence of what had happened. He kept the wounds so that Thomas could touch them, so that you could know they were real, so that 2,000 years from now, in whatever darkness you are sitting in whatever garden of grief or doubt or exhaustion you have found yourself, you would know that the hands reaching toward you are not the hands of someone who has never suffered. They are scarred hands. They have always been scarred hands. Thomas looks at them and says, the shortest creed in the New Testament, "My Lord and my God." He does not need to touch them after all. The offer was enough. And this is where the loop closes, because at the beginning of this video, I told you that one person would touch Jesus and it would be the worst thing they ever did. Judas, the kiss in the garden, the touch that handed God to his killers. But here, at the end, is the other side of that. Thomas, who wanted to touch and could not bring himself to believe, finds that the offer of the touch is enough to break him open. The worst touch in Scripture is a kiss from a man who had already decided. The best touch in Scripture is an offer extended to a man who had not decided yet. One touch closed around Jesus like a trap. One touch was held open like a door, and the door is still open. We started with a man at the edge of a road, a man who had not felt another person's hand in years, who had said the word unclean so many times it had stopped being a legal designation and become something closer to a name, who stood at the edge of the crowd and watched Jesus walk toward him and could not fully believe that the hand coming toward him was coming toward him. We end here with 3 things I want you to carry out of this video. The first is this: every single touch in this video broke a rule. Jesus touched the leper and became legally unclean. The hemorrhaging woman touched Jesus and made him legally unclean. He touched a corpse. He touched the ear of an enemy. He offered his wounds to a doubter. Every one of these moments violated the careful system that said holiness must be protected from the broken. Jesus did not protect his holiness from broken people. He spent it on them, deliberately, every time. The second is this: every person who reached for him was terrified. The woman trembled when she came forward. Jairus had just been told not to bother. The sinful woman walked into a room full of people who despised her. Thomas said out loud the thing faith is not supposed to say. They were all afraid, and they reached anyway. You are allowed to be afraid. You are allowed to reach anyway. The third, and this is the one I want you to sit with tonight. Thomas wanted to touch the wounds, and Jesus kept them. He is risen, and he is whole, and he kept the scars. Not because he forgot to heal them, because they are the proof. They are the evidence that what happened on that cross was not theater. It was real. It cost something. And the God who went through it for you specifically, not for humanity in the abstract, but for you, the person watching this, in whatever room you are sitting in right now. He still has the wounds. That means he still knows what it cost. And he reached toward you anyway. Which person in this video do you relate to most? The leper who needed to be touched first? The woman who reached in secret and hoped no one would notice? Thomas, who needed the offer before he could believe? Tell me below. I read every comment. If this video meant something to you, share it with one person, not for the channel, for them. Because somewhere in your life, there is someone standing at the edge of a road, saying a word about themselves that was never supposed to be their name. And they need to know that a hand is coming toward them. It always was.